Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. Oh, I have a joke. Oh, wait a second. Make sure that I get this right. There are several comics from a certain era that I love. I'll make sure I got the right one. Yeah, the great Jackie Mason. On his wife's urging, he decided to go to therapy. The psychiatrist said, "Mr. Mason, what we hope to do here is understand your unconscious." And Jackie said, "Doctor, that's a problem." I gotta get the punchline. "Doctor, that's a problem. My unconscious is none of my business." You get it? Because it's unconscious. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, he said that the unconscious mind is like a huge ocean, and the conscious mind is like a cork floating in the middle of that ocean. Yeah. But he also said this: they are of equal power, because the coherent conscious mind has volition and the ability to change and to act. A lot of the pain that we see in our world is caused because people have not understood their own unconscious urges, fears. All of that stuff comes from old places in us. And if we're going to heal and grow ourselves and our race, the human race, we have to begin to call it forward into consciousness. We've got to grow. So that's my title today, is We Heal Together. I chose that because we are celebrating Black History Month, and we want to give a presence to groups that have not been front and center in our consciousness, so that we can see how. And last week, if you were here or if you saw it online, that panel with the Black women that Ken Gale put together, was that not incredible? So powerful. And I know I felt inspired and lifted up by the power of Black women in our culture and what they have given. It's so beautiful that to giving them the proper place at the table to say, yes, we have something to contribute and have contributed. We're calling forward, evoking the names of Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks. Black history is all of our history. I'm so grateful that this church knows that and celebrates that. It's a time of great division. You've heard it said again and again that politics were divided and culture were divided, and we are unity. It's our name, it's our theology. That we are, by our very philosophy, we cannot otherize, we cannot demonize groups of people. We must stand in oneness, just like Carole King wrote and our Julia just sang. That is our calling, and it's hard sometimes. Karen Armstrong is a British theologian, and she was a former Catholic nun. She was doing her own study. She was a scholar, and as she began to study comparative religions, and she learned that they're all saying the same thing when you get to the deeper truths, and she became very interested in this mystical oneness that all the great faith traditions had. And she became a leader, and in 2008, she received the TED Talk prize and was given $100,000. And with that money, she created the Charter for Compassion and the organization to support this charter, to see these beautiful words to go around the world. A couple of weeks ago, I had breakfast with my dear friend Pam Lewis. Houston is a compassionate city, and Pam is the chair of Compassionate Houston. It's a wonderful organization that we partner with a lot. And Pam said, "Have you seen this video?" And I thought, well, we have these beautiful new screens. Let's use them. So I'd like to invite you to just enjoy this beautiful video. This is a reading of the Charter for Compassion. And let's roll it.
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions.
Calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves. Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures.
To dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there.
To honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being.
Treating everybody without exception.
With absolute justice, equity, and respect.
It is also necessary in both public and private life.
To refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain.
To act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest.
To impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody.
And to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies.
Is a denial of our common humanity.
We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately.
And that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion.
We therefore call upon all men and women
to restore compassion
to the center of morality and religion.
To return to the ancient principle
that any interpretation of Scripture
that breeds violence,
hatred,
or disdain
is illegitimate.
To ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information
about other traditions, religions, and cultures.
To encourage a positive appreciation
of cultural and religious diversity.
To cultivate
an informed empathy
with the suffering of all human beings,
even those
regarded as enemies.
We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness.
Compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries.
Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential for human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity.
It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable in the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Karen Armstrong. This is where we're headed. We don't live up to it all the time, but this is one of those statements that we go, yes, that aligns with what we teach in Unity. That aligns with what we teach in New Thought. That is how we see it. That compassion is the way that our oneness, our non-duality, is expressed in and as humanity. Well, that's done. Let's go on to the next thing. The work is far from done, isn't it? We can see that there's a lot that we have yet to live into it. I particularly like this section where it says we even acknowledge that in the name of religions, more harm and suffering have increased. It's true. I don't know what to call this. Just one day, not that long ago, maybe in the last 10 years, I was reading the passage from the Garden of Gethsemane when Jesus, the night he was arrested and before the crucifixion, it's reported that he said, Father, if it be thy will, that this cup could be taken from me, but not my will, but thy will be done. And I'd always been taught, because that was the brutality of the execution that was coming, Jesus knew that he would be tortured and killed, and that's what he was saying. If there's another, I don't want that. And I thought, that doesn't sound like Jesus. Jesus, I'm sure, nobody wants to be tortured, but Jesus was a great soul whose teaching are about this universal presence of the kingdom of heaven within. It can't be just that he was afraid of some pain physically. And I don't know where, this is just maybe my mind making up. This is in the gospel according to Michael Gott. Take it or leave it. But I thought, what if that moment happened in that way? Jesus could see the thousands of years come after him and all of the harm that would be done in his name. All of the wars fought, the people killed in his name. What if that's what he was saying? Is there any other way? Oh, divine creator, is there any other way for this truth to go forward? But if we hadn't had this religion called Christianity, which had preserved the teachings of Jesus, it would have never come to me. And so in this very frail and flawed thing called Christianity, the teachings of this wonderful man, Jesus of Nazareth, have survived. And so what we hope to do in this church is to live in the way of Jesus, not in the religion that was formed around him that continues to do harm. So I get my inspiration from a lot of different places, and Buddhism is a particular path where I find a lot of resonance in my soul, and I think in some ways it's a perfect complement to Unity and to New Thought. that we don't have a very good answer for suffering in our teaching, and Buddhism has deep and powerful teachings around that. I was watching the teacher Tara Brach, and she was quoting another teacher, and I missed the name, but she was saying that how do we go from illness to wellness? It's I to we. If you think of the word I, illness, or we, illness. That when we become so self-absorbed in our own pain and suffering, when we are so inward, when we have cut ourselves off, we feel isolated and disconnected from other beings, we are in illness. And the way for our individual healing and for the world is for us to get well, is to find our we. Can we begin to reach beyond our pain, reach beyond our fear, and begin to see collective humanity as a part of me, as a part of God? There is illness in our world. I've been thinking about this too. Both sides of the political divide are going, something ain't right. Now, they may disagree on both the diagnosis and the cure, but there is something going around where we go, something isn't right. This isn't the way we're supposed to live. This isn't it. There is a dis-ease in humanity. It's not new. I think it's been with us forever. But we're seeing it pop up in new and interesting ways. And what is the cure for this dis-ease? How do we get back to ease? It is in this teaching of we. That we are a part of something that is greater than anything we could imagine. We live from our oneness with God and each other. That's our purpose statement at Unity of Houston. In community. Repeat after me. In community, we live from our oneness with God and each other. I've just put those two together in the wrong way. That's okay. This is good. We'll keep going. We nurture and empower each other, transforming our lives that we may serve the world. Don't you want to be a part of something like that? That's what we're about today. Tara Brach also told a story in her Dharma talk about, it's from the 40 years after Buddha had his awakening, he taught, and he drew to him disciples, and he would just sit in a field and teach, much like Jesus sat on a mountain and taught. And Mara is, it's a demon in Buddhist theology, but it's really meant to be the embodiment of our shadow. All of those parts of hatred and harm and fear are just put together in that teaching as this person, Mara. And it's said that Buddha's cousin Ananda, who was a disciple and one of the first teachers of the wonderful teaching of Buddhism, when Buddha would be teaching and he would see Mara out there, and he would go to his cousin and go, "Hey, cuz, Mara's here. What's going to happen? All of our disowned, negative parts of ourselves, it's here in a form. What do we do?" And Buddha would go, Mara, come have tea. There's a deep teaching in this. We will always have a shadow while we are in form. And the teaching is to not push it aside as being something else, but just to make space for it, just to witness. This is part of our ongoing evolution in spirit. And when we begin to pull it into awareness, then we have choice. And we begin to practice a different way of understanding. And we don't act from that shadow self as much. That is one of the ways that we heal our illness and our dis-ease, is by becoming comfortable with our humanity. And if you've been around me enough from my teaching, I make a lot of space for our humanity in our divinity. There was a time in our teaching where if you were sick, you didn't go to church because you didn't want people going, "Well, what did you think to cause that to happen? What's in your consciousness to cause you to get sick?" I think we've matured past that. I think we have. We do believe in the co-creative power of the mind, that our mind is a facet of the one mind, and we can, as we say in the law of mind action, it's thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. But we apply that law to ourselves, not to others. What do we apply to others? Compassion and love. And this is the invitation to our healing today, that we begin to live that truth. In the chapter of Genesis, in the Garden of Eve story, the Cain and Abel, well, Cain's response when it's like, where's your brother? He said, am I my brother's keeper? And that phrase has been held in our consciousness for a long time. Am I responsible for him? Am I responsible for her? But what does the teaching of oneness tell us? We're connected. Martin Luther King, in his letter from a Birmingham jail, which I read just 2 weeks ago, parts of it, he has this beautiful phrase that he was writing on scraps of paper in the jail cell. I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Now, I'm not responsible for your actions, but there is a collective responsibility to grow, to heal, to evolve, to reveal the truth of our divinity. And where do I do that work? By controlling your life and telling you what to do and fix all your problems by judging you and then, is that right? I got off script, didn't I? Where do we heal the collective? In the individual. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. We're not to be codependent with humanity. Did you know that? We're not responsible for what other people do, and we don't have to go around correcting them. Jesus said, don't judge unless you be judged. Well, for a long time, I just would always say, well, I don't judge anybody but judgmental people. But that doesn't work either. That if we can leave behind our codependence, our need to take care of other people and make sure they're all right so that I'll be all right, then we evolve into a place called independence, which is great, and that's where the New Thought movement was born, and that's where we've been for a long time. But there is a next level that we are called to now. It's called interdependence. Just like Dr. King said, there is an interrelatedness. And we can take care of our own household while we extend compassion and love and healing towards others. I'd like to read a passage from the Gospels to you. Sometimes I just tell the story, and sometimes I really feel like I just need to be in the text. And I know that Jesus didn't speak English. I know that he would have spoken in Aramaic, and then those teachings would have been translated to Koinonia Greek. And so it's kind of far from the original, but my heart tells me that this gets the heart of what Jesus spoke. This comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10. There are 12 verses that I would like to read, starting with 25. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? He replied, how do you read it? He answered, love the Lord, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But the lawyer wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And in reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to that place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was. And when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said, look after him. And when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Jesus asked the lawyer, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy." And Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." There's a false teaching in Christianity right now. There was a book written a few years ago called The Sin of Empathy. And people who are following that philosophy are saying that we should not be concerned with people on the other side of the world, that that's actually anti-Christian. Very prominent politician, I won't say which one, you can Google it yourself, recently said, "We've gotten away from the Christian tradition. We're supposed to love God and our family first, and then those closest to us, and only down the road do we prioritize others." That's Christian teaching, but that's not what people are saying. That is false. The story of the Good Samaritan, the priest and the Levite, the ones who were most respected in the culture of Jesus' audience, they were the ones who were doing it right according to the status quo. They were the ones who were living without sin. They were doing it right. And they came back, and what did they do when they saw someone who was other? The Samaritans were the most despised. They did the wrong, they were praying wrong, they were sacrificing wrong, they had the wrong scriptures, and so to a religious Jewish person of Jesus' time, to hear this story, that would be as shocking to know that the Samaritan was the hero of the story as to say, the story of the good white supremacist, the story of the good Republican, or the story of the good Democrat, depending on which side you're on that. Jesus was being pretty subversive. He was not just preaching kindness and peace and love. He was getting under people's skin with this teaching. He was saying, something isn't right in the way we're doing this. There is an illness here. And to get to the wellness, we've got to find our we again. Augustine of Hippo did say that what this politician said, that we first love God and our own family and then our close neighbors and friends and then later. Augustine said that is the natural way. That is the natural order of love. But that is not the Christ way. The Christ way is to see all humanity as our neighbor, particularly those we despise, particularly those who we just have no understanding of how could you do that? Why would anybody ever live that way? You know, those are questions that aren't really questions. My dad would do that. You know, he was like, now why on earth would you think that was a good idea? That's not a question. That's a judgment. I love my dad. And we do this with whole groups of people. They're not like us. It's okay to judge them and not love them because they're not like us. They are not worthy of our Christly love, are they? And what Jesus told us in this story is no. Love the ones who are the hardest to love. And there is our healing. This idea that we are to love all of humanity only appeared in human consciousness about 10,000 years ago. It's new. We're still trying it on for size, and so far we haven't gotten the hang of it. But this is a new idea in our conscious evolution, that all beings are sacred, that all beings are to be loved by us when we are living in oneness. This is new. And 10,000 years ago sounds like a long time ago until you actually find out how old the earth is, and it's more than 6,000 years. This is something new. And so when you're doing anything new, do you remember learning to ride a bicycle? That thing made no sense. I was in my prayer class last week, this metaphor, well, there's a quote that we read about how doing these practices is like putting training wheels on when we're learning to pray. And I remember, because I had had enough experience of physics that if I stood on something that only had these two little surfaces here, it was going to fall over. I knew. I had been practicing with object permanence and physics. You know, you drop something, gravity is there. I knew all about physics when I was 5 years old and was being taught how to ride a bicycle. There's no way this is going to work. And my dad and my brother kind of held on. I don't think I did the training wheels. They didn't really work. And they pushed me and they let go. They said, pedal, Mike, pedal, Mike. And something happened in my little mind that I decided to suspend my understanding, my great understanding of the laws of physics, and do what my brothers and my dad and my brother told me to do, because they knew how to do this. And so I tried on a new idea. To get past my limiting belief, I'm going to pedal. And then I learned about a new law called momentum. This idea of oneness is a new law for humanity. And we're just trying it on, and it feels wobbly. And right now, it's much easier just to hate the haters. But it won't get us where we need to go. It won't work. So let us look to the great teachers of all the traditions and see a different way. And it will be a process of awakening for us individually and collectively. I don't know very many people who just wake up and be like, all right, here we go. If you do, I don't understand you, but I love you. I rise let me say that. I wake up very early. I don't rise super early. I wake up about 4 a.m. every day. And I know, it's true. You probably all know that time from the other side, don't you, Jackie? She's young. But I need time to kind of come awake, and caffeine. We need time to wake up, and we have time. We've each of us been given, a few years here in these bodies. That's the time we have to wake up. You don't have to do it all today, but can you do a little bit today? Audre Lorde, amazing activist and wise woman, she says this: "It is not our differences that divide us, it's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences that divides us." This is why we honor Black history, so we can learn our common humanity. I grew up 25 miles from the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. 21 miles from there, and I never was taught about it. 150 to 300 people were killed. A thriving business district was burned to the ground. 800 people were injured. Many people were destitute. A crime. A demonstration of our collective illness happened 25 miles from the house I grew up in, and I was not taught that history. I took Oklahoma history, and it said nothing about it. We have to bring that which we have pushed aside and pushed out because it's so uncomfortable. We have to bring it into consciousness so that we can heal, so that we can help awaken the spirit of oneness in all humanity. So the question, as Julia sang it to us, what am I supposed to do? What can I do except be one? One, but one. One with all. This is why we stand with African Americans. This is why we stand with people who have experienced oppression and who are still experiencing it. It's why we stand with our trans community members right now, and they are being erased by some. In the National Park Service, this week on the website, they took the T out of LGBTQ on the page for the Stonewall riots. That's rewriting history. That's erasing whole people. That doesn't work. We have to stand with people. We're standing with immigrants the best we know how to do. We're not trying to go against the law. We're trying to protect people with the law. Our purpose in community, we nurture and empower each other, transforming our lives that we may serve the world. We live in crazy times. There is hatred and chaos, dis-ease everywhere. But that's only part of the story. We also live in a time of a great awakening. We live in a time of a great possibility of humanity knowing who we are, saying this is the truth of us. Now, there are maybe 350 of us here gathered in this morning, probably another couple hundred watching online. A few more hundred will watch this later this week. We're a small group against this great sea of humanity, and that's exactly right. the great Nobel Prize-winning chemist Ilya Prigogine. I got it. Pretty close, Prigogine. I always looked at Linda Starr, she knows him. He says this: when a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. That doesn't just happen in chemistry. That happens in human culture and consciousness. I hope that you will be a part of this island that we are creating of coherence and welcome. If you're willing to be a greater stand for human healing, you belong with us. Come stand by me. That's what I'm about. That's what our leadership is about. That we have a place to stand, not just because we think it's a good idea, because it's been the revealed spiritual truth of all the great religions. All the mystics agree there's one thing happening here. It's the life of God. We're a part of it. We live and move and have our being in God. Let's live from that truth. And it's okay if we're a little wobbly. Would you pray with me now? In this moment, I remember the deepest of truths is that there is only one power, one source, one infinite being that is beyond space-time, beyond language, beyond any ability to put in a box. This one is the infinite good. I call it God because that's the biggest word I know. But it is beyond all human ability to capture or describe. And yet it is intimate and loves me. That this one presence is what I am. I am its expression. I am, as Myrtle Fillmore said, I am a child of God, therefore I do not inherit sickness. A claim of our spiritual inheritance is that we are in this together. We are all created from love to be expressions and givers and receivers of love. And in this truth, I anchor my consciousness now, and I speak my word. I declare right here and now that Unity of Houston is an island of healing, an island of welcome, an island of coherence. We are a doorway for humanity's healing right here at 2929 Unity Drive in Houston, Texas. We are an opening for God. We are a place of healing our own lives, of releasing our own false beliefs and limiting ideas of who and what we are. We rise in consciousness now to be that love that we are created to be. And we practice kindness and compassion. We practice strength, standing with those who need our strength. And most of all, we practice love. Loving God with all that we are, loving all humanity to the best of our ability as we love ourselves. And I give thanks for this moment of miracle and transformation. And may we go from here and continue our healing. We let it be, and so it is. Amen. I don't know if anybody has told you today, Jackie Klotz, that they love you, but I love you. And I don't know if anybody has told you today that they love you, but I do love you. And I invite you to be a part of this love. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.